This is Henry Frederick of Headline Surfer, and we're here today with County Chair-elect Jason Davis. Mr. Davis, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. Morning.
Your position is your title is going to change in the next 24 hours.
Yes, I will be the county chairman.
So no more elect.
No more elect.
So you got a shorter title.
Yay.
That's probably better.
Yes.
Kind of goes with your theme of cutting.
Yeah, pretty much.
You were elected by an overwhelming majority, 20,000 plus, in November over a much more experienced named politician in Carl Persis. And of course, during the primary, you had a third candidate, Ted Doran, prominent attorney for the school board and other representations in the past. How did you do it?
Pavement, personality, and perseverance. Very simple.
The three P's.
The three P's. You go knock on the doors, you talk to the people, you're walking door to door to door, so there's your pavement. There were times when you got to a point where it was, why am I doing this? Oh my gosh, this is crazy, this is expensive, this is, you just have to keep persevering and persevering and persevering. And many of my friends and a lot of people that have been working with it for that campaign, they said, man, you got the personality to do this. So that's where the three P's came from.
Now, it's one thing, the campaign, I know it's a lot of work, it's boots on the ground.
Boots on the ground.
Reference to your military background, and we'll get to that in a minute. But once you're elected, if you're elected, is it easy? Is it gravy from there, or is that when the real hard?
This is when the real work. This is when the real hard work. The rest is physical, emotional. Now it's mental strain and mental stress, and this is the time when you have to take all these ideas and these concepts and what the people elected you to do, and you need to follow through. That's what I've been doing for the past month and a half since the election. I've been at the county offices. I've been going through all the paperwork, going through all the agendas, reading everything I've put my little hands on. And making these decisions in my mind. How would I vote on this? That's why. That's why. That's why. And I think I'm making people a little nervous up there, because if I have a question about an ordinance or a referendum that's coming before the council, I do not have a problem with picking up the phone, dialing the extension of the person who's written that or in charge of that particular department, and saying, "Come on over here and let's talk." And I ask the hard questions. Why are we doing this? Do we need this thing? How much is it going to cost? What, we got to raise taxes? That's not going to fly. How much is it going to cost us in the long term? I mean, it's the three questions that I said I was going to ask. I think the county administration and staff is starting to get to the point where we better go in to Mr. Davis's office and we better say, do we need it? How much is it going to cost? No tax in it. And what's it going to cost us in the long term?
Those are the three questions.
Three big questions. And it's got to hold mustard to those, because if it doesn't, I'm sorry, you don't have my support.
Well, let me ask you this. In the past, until we came along 4.5 years ago, electronic media, you had the daily print newspaper, which I used to work at.
Yes.
And you had, thankfully I didn't have to cover government, it was police and courts, but you had a situation where it wasn't the county chair that was in the newspaper on a day-to-day basis.
No, it wasn't.
County manager or the spokesman. Now, you're elected, you're the county chair. Are you the voice of that the people need to hear from, or is the county manager that we see every day in the paper?
No, in accordance to the county charter, there are certain rules and regulations that the county chair is supposed to adhere. I'm the guy that cuts the ribbons. I'm the guy that leads the meetings, but I'm also the voice and the face of Volusia County. Now, if there's something that's going on and somebody says, we need a comment from the county council, a council member, they need to come to my office, because that's what I'm supposed to do.
You touched on something that I look at very strongly, and that is, we cut the ribbons. Is it about PR, or is it about accountability? Because it seems to me like things like the scandal with the advertising authority down in New Smyrna, or the thing with the beach patrol with the lifeguards having sex with, not the lifeguards, but the beach patrol officers in their 40s having sex with 16 and 17-year-old girls. It seems to me, and by the way, somebody went to prison for that. It seems to me that we need to hear from the elected officials, not the administrator, not the spokesman who's, you know, he gets paid to say the right things. Well, my experience has always been that.
Yeah, well, it's like this. Like I've always told everybody, if you want what's really going on, and the way I see things, don't ask anybody else. I'm the one you're supposed to ask. It's my point of view. We make policy, and that's what the county council and the county chair is supposed to do. We make the policy, and we push it out to the county administration, and they're supposed to implement the policy. They're not supposed to translate it. They're not supposed to push it, mold it, bend it.
Well, see, that's
comes out, point, this is the way it is. As in reference to someone, if someone in the county is breaking the law, and they've broken the law, and it is a jail, you're going to jail. Like the Constitution says, no one is above the law, and no one will be above the law. If I broke the law, I would expect, if I was speeding and they pulled me over, I would expect the ticket. I would almost require them to write me a ticket. No favoritisms. Of course, I don't speed. I'm very adamant about driving the speed.
Right, but so people don't take it the wrong way. What you're saying is, if you're accused of something, you go to court, and whatever comes out of that, that's the law.
Let's leave it to the legal system.
Well, an example of the idea of, you know, trying to get information, for example, on a daily basis, if we get a press release for an arrest or an incident where somebody was shot or something, you'll get a press release that has a couple paragraphs that is basically dribble. It doesn't say much, except that there was a shooting. It doesn't say, you know, we want more specific details. Well, it's the same thing in government. When you have something that's being an initiative, it would be nice to see what the transparency, what the background that went into that, to have something like that.
Oh, I definitely, and I'm constantly encouraging individuals that are involved in the creation or the writing of these ordinances and things like this to, you know, hey, I've got this. Whatever I have is a matter of public knowledge. If I have it in my hand and it's in print, it is a matter of public knowledge. If you came up to me and said, I understand we're getting ready to do a purchase of, arbitrarily speaking, some road somewhere and, you know, 200 acres around it, I need some information on that.
Right, exactly.
If I have it in my hand, I'm required by law, if you fill out the formal request to say, I want that, and you hand it to my secretary, and if I have it in my hand, sure, come on in. I don't have a problem with showing you what I have. Well,
actually, the law is very clear. If we make a call,
yes, you don't have to.
You don't have to put it in writing. It's encouraged. It's encouraged by organizations like the First Amendment Foundation in Florida, so that there's a record to show that you made the request at a certain time. It seems to me that government in the past has used the media to get an advantage, or to, you know, to get what it wants out of somebody. But then when it goes the other way around and we want information, okay, well, what does this mean? Then suddenly, oh, it's under investigation, or...
Yeah,
and that was the whole thing with that scandal with the ad authority, where it was coming one way, and then... But the county was feeding it to the daily paper instead of, you know...
We're going to start working on that. I've been speaking with our public relations and said, look, you can't just give it to one. You got to give it to all. That's transparency. If you're going to give it to one paper that's printed every day, and then you have to go, we have these weekly papers, you need to give them the same information. And don't forget about the online guys, because that more people are getting their news online every day. They'll pull it up, they'll read it, they'll be on their laptop, they'll be on their pad or whatever they'll do, their cell phone, they'll be doing it some way. But most people don't have time to go buy the paper
to be honest, the real difference is the weeklies will go to a government meeting, regurgitate the government speak, and put it out a week later.
Yeah,
the daily
does it every day.
Does it every day.
But these internet.
But what we do is, as it's happening, I might put stuff out, and oftentimes
3 o'clock in the morning.
3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock. I'm actually putting things out that are happening overnight, or things that are fresh that the daily doesn't get to. And even that's why we really are a 24/7.
Yeah, that's right.
News site.
Our news cycle has turned totally. I mean, it's now basically almost to a 15-minute news cycle.
Well, before we get to your top 3 initiatives for 2013, let's while on the focus of media, it's kind of ironic that you're talking to the online media, the internet newspaper today, and not the daily newspaper. Why is that?
Well, because we're being videoed, and this is a record of what's going on. You know, I studied journalism, and I know all the terms in journalism. And, you know, it's...
But you haven't had a very welcomed,
warm
and fuzzy relationship with the daily newspaper, have you?
No, I have not had a very...
I mean, let's get the brass tacks here.
Yeah, I've not been very well loved by the newspaper.
You were ignored largely
right.
by the media. In fact, I remember when qualifying had ended, there was a thing in the paper about, there was called Persis on the front page. Here was Ted Doran with a photographer newsroom just happened to be there.
Just so happened.
Just happened to be there when he decided at the last minute, oh, I'm going to qualify.
Right.
And there was Jason Davis in a black and white photo on the jump page, looking like a mugshot. We'll get to that in a minute. Where you were kind of like an afterthought, like you were 4 years ago when you ran for Congress.
Right.
There was Tom Feeney on the Republican side. You ran as a Republican candidate.
Yeah.
On the other side, there was Suzanne Cosmas, the well-known Democrat who was a state rep.
Clint Curtis.
And Clint Curtis
and Gar Bullock.
But they were minority candidates. I mean, they were
we had one
second tier candidates.
Yeah, well, I guess
I think you were a second tier candidate.
I was considered a second tier.
Even in this election.
I would even say I was probably considered a third tier.
Well, yeah.
I was the bottom of the barrel.
But you with the stuff Doran, you know, Ted's a very lively person.
Yes,
the TV commercials about the people dying because the ambulances aren't getting there. I think he had a very valid point. I think maybe it was just the way it was delivered. But instead of getting into all that, well, if you want to make a thought about that, go ahead. But I think that the fact that you came in second in the primary, then we got you to the point where it was Jason Davis and Carl Persis.
And we were running neck and neck throughout towards the general.
But he was expected to win big. And
he was expected to win big.
You said something interesting to me earlier about why you thought that the margin was so, because like we endorsed Carl Persis. We didn't endorse you, I'm sorry, but we didn't. Although we have had, I think, a pretty strong relationship in terms of media and government, or government elect.
Well, no, I am right now still government. You know, it's like whatever comes through.
Right.
You know, it's a great thing is, you know, all the experiences that I've had for the past month and a half.
It's interesting though that you could actually,
it's going forward.
But you could actually bring up an initiative right now before the council.
Yeah, I could today.
You could today if there was an emergency situation.
No.
Tomorrow you're the chair.
Tomorrow I'm the chair and I don't get to make motions. My big thing is I get to I'm one of the guys that gets to work with the agenda. So
you prevailed and came in a close second in the primary, but not close enough where people where there was a speculation, especially in the media. I mean, we didn't endorse you, but we feel like we have a good relationship since the general election. You've been very good about being available and being transparent. The situation with Carl Persis, you won by over 20,000 votes. You said something to me earlier, a couple of weeks ago, you thought, why? Repeat that for us now, why you thought you won so easily, when the expectation was you were the one that was going to get crushed.
Right. Well, I think it was, during his tenures as a teacher and a council member and all that, of course, he paid into the state retirement
administrator.
And he took a massive drop payment, over $270,000. And
that's a state retirement.
That's a state retirement program, drop program. But it was very adamantly shown that, I had to resign from my position as a council member in order to, and I have to do it or I won't be able to collect this. Well, wait a minute, there comes a time when it's...
But he could have collected it.
He would have collected it after his term, if he would have been elected. So, and he was, I think that was a big determining thing, and the people looked at it and said, he's getting what? Oh, no more people dipping out of the county.
It's not that he was greedy as much as.
No, but people.
But he deserved it. He earned it.
He earned it. No, don't get me wrong. He earned it, but perception is reality.
So you feel that people.
A lot of people came to me and said, he's getting how much? What kind? And I'm like, easy folks, he earned it. He did his thing. He did his 30 years as a teacher.
So is the idea that you're getting a big drop payment, and then you get your he was going to get his regular retirement,
yeah, right? And then
have the salary of the
and
county
plus he's
share
going to
on
get
top of
Social
it.
Security because he's Social Security age now. So I mean, it was, you know, everybody was looking at this big dollar sign starting to roll over and roll over and roll over, and I mean, I had a lot of comments about it. I said, look, you know, he earned it, he did it. I'm not really defending the man, but it's, if I was in his shoes, I earned it.
So suffice to say,
but I mean, people.
you feel like that had an
different.
impact.
I think that had a very large impact on.
What about your initiative of being the outsider, the idea you're the everyday guy?
Well,
Some people thought it was gimmicky, but it worked.
Well, it's really not gimmick. I am the outside guy. You know, I'm not a politician. Did radio for 5 years. Went to college. I'm a musician. All kinds of things. Management. Owned a business. The thing is that I am the outsider. I'm not part of the political machine. So everybody's a little nervous that, oh, he's coming in. He doesn't know anything. Believe me, I know a lot more than a lot of people give me credit for. But I'm studying and I'm.
Now, your predecessor, Frank Bruno.
Yes. Okay.
He was an example of somebody who benefited from time. 20 years on the county council,
Yep.
from one seat to another.
Jumping around. Yes.
Let me ask you this: if we have term limits for county seat positions,
Yes, we do.
how are they effective? Kind of a joke if you can go
It
from
really
being
is. It
a
is.
district member to an at-large member, then you can be the county chair, then you can go back to being a district member. I mean, it's like musical chairs.
Well, yeah, and that's.
And you've had the same people for the last
20 years.
20
The
years.
same.
Persis was on there a long time, Bruno, Joey Alexander finally retired.
Yeah,
Northy, Pat Northy is
Joyce-
going to be,
20 years this year.
yeah, she's got 2 years on her
Last
term, and
term,
that's she's done.
Yes. It's
Well,
it needs a change. I mean, the intent. See, when we voted for the county charter, there was an intent of the voter, and the intent of the voter was to cycle through 8 years, get off the council. 8 years, get off the council. But there's one little word in there, and it only takes one little word in any law to change the whole vernacular and how it's read. And that one word allows for this musical chair thing. There's been some discussion about it. And that may be something that comes up in a year or two.
Like, for example, with Carl Persis, the idea of running was, well, I'm experienced, I've been here, I've done this. Whereas you're the outsider, you don't have a clue, you've never done this before. I don't mean like you don't have a clue as a person, but, you know, the idea of, he's never sat into one of these committee meetings. He's never, you know, he hasn't gone through all the motions of dealing with a budget. But it seems like they just move around in musical chairs. But in the case of Bruno, sure, there was the ribbon cuttings and things like that. There was,
Groundbreaking.
right? The shovels, the golden shovels, But when it came to the actual news, nowhere to be found. It was the PIO. Who makes a lot of money, or the county manager who makes a lot of money, and everything was sort of lost in translation.
Well, it's like this. I'm there every day.
So you've won the election, and all of a sudden, you and I met on the night before Thanksgiving to do the first of these interviews since you were elected. Well, we did one when you were elected. I mean, when the vote came down, and the next day we did an interview, but our first big interview for a holiday, we did a Thanksgiving Day message from the county chair-elect, something that's not been done before. And we talked about the gas tax, and we'll get to that in a few minutes, but that afternoon there was this breaking story online from the News Journal about the gas tax that wasn't very complimentary of you.
Yeah.
And then that Sunday there was another story with the county's worst road, which happens to be Daytona Beach's worst road.
Yeah.
And a column from the editor, Pat Rice, that said basically if you didn't play ball, you would end up being 1 of 7. That you're not going to be able to call the shots unless you have to. You can't just say I'm going to do this. You have to have this consensus.
Well, yes.
But the way it came across was, you know, you would be doing ribbon cuttings and you'd be 1 of 7. That your position of leader would not mean much. How did you take that?
Took it as one man's opinion. Very simple. You know, I know what my authority is. I know what my job is, and that's what I do.
And that shows that you have, that you have the gumption of being able to let the media take it for what it is. But then it got kind of personal, didn't it? There was a story written, published on the home page, the front page on December 6th. Well, it was online actually, and then it came into the paper. And that was the headline where new Volusia Chair Davis had 2001 fraud arrest, charge later dropped. The word arrest, that's kind of, wow, I didn't know Jason Davis was arrested.
Yeah, it's a tough word.
That's right on the whole front page, across to the right-hand side above the fold.
Yeah, right there.
Oh my God, I can't believe we elected this guy.
But when people, you know, and there was a lot of conjecture on that, but the end.
But the reality was, you had told him in the same story, this is not news. It was reported 4 years ago. Just summarize. You want me to summarize it, or you want to?
I'll summarize. 4 years ago, when I ran for county, or ran for
Congress,
this information came out. I agreed. Yes, it happened. It was pretty much a moot point.
Now this was in 2001. Your ex-wife.
She stole money and just
put it in a mutual account,
right.
And you got dragged into it.
And I got dragged into it. No, it was a mutual account. It was a house account.
Right, and then the charges against you were dropped. They didn't even go to trial.
Didn't even go to trial. Charges dropped.
It wasn't dropped on a technicality. It was dropped period because you weren't involved, right?
Right. Totally.
So to get the thing moving here, but then the news journal. It sounded like this was brand new news.
And it wasn't. It was disclosed 4 years earlier or 8 years ago, whatever it was.
No, the News Journal made a statement to the effect of they went through their own files
and they couldn't find it.
But
you found it.
Well, I found it in under 2 minutes. I took my credit card
and
I punched in the numbers. I did a couple of keywords, and there it was in less than 2 minutes. Written by a now retired writer, John Bazzo.
Yeah.
Where it was actually the word arrested. Was in there, and it was explained that it was dismissed. How does that make you feel that I found it, pointed it out to them, wrote to them, and there hasn't been any kind of clarification on it?
That's on them. I mean, it's up to them to do the due diligence.
Now we did
and they had that information, so I don't know why they couldn't find it.
Well, we did a follow-up story. It says the headline was County Chair-elect Jason Davis wants apology and correction from Daytona newspaper.
Never.
How does that make you feel that, in terms of trust with the media, that's supposed to work? They expect government to be accountable. Don't you expect the media to be accountable?
Yes. Well, with great power comes great responsibility, and the power of the media, they need to be responsible as well as the government. So if you're going to sit here and say, well, the government is doing this, this, and this, and this, well, then you also need to be held to the same standard. If you're not going to be able to say, I have all this power to print the news, and you print something that I'm not going to say is inaccurate, but there's some gray area here that they crossed, and it's like, well, wait a minute, we did know about it. We should really print.
So it's one thing.
They didn't.
It's one thing where the county manager, Mr. Deneen, says he can't sleep at night because of the gas tax, and the usual source that you see is quoted. But then to have you being arrested and make it sound like it's some new.
Nothing.
Shocker.
No, it wasn't.
So, in terms of transparency on the media's point of view...
Yeah, they need to be just as transparent as our government.
But the thing is, if they're the ones that are putting out a story in the morning, and they're reaching a lot of the older generation that still reads print newspapers, because we're both 50, people our age and under are just not, they're not picking up a print paper.
Yeah, we don't print it.
It's right there on the internet.
Right.
Does that concern you? Because those are the voters that are more... and more to vote.
No, I don't. I'm not really concerned about that because...
It's the truth. You know the truth.
I know the truth, and the truth will set you free, so to say. And,
What does it say about competition here? That I know it's kind of self-serving for me to bring it up, but the idea that you had an equalizer here in terms of telling the truth.
Well, yes, I had an equalizer. Believe me, I'm not the only... It's not only on the online, but I've also been on TV and discussed matters. It's like this, you want to be fair, be fair. If you don't want to be fair, and if you don't want to hold yourself to the same standards that I am required by law to hold myself to, then I really can't associate with that particular situation. So, it's gone down this road of I don't have to talk to anybody in the media. I mean, even though I do. I don't have to. I'm not required to. I get to pick and choose who I speak to.
And I guess there's a mutual respect issue for you. If you
Yeah,
harm me,
if you're going to be disrespectful, not only to me, I mean, believe me, I've been all over the world. I've been treated, you know, from one high level to, because I was in the military and all that other good stuff. You know, I've gone from one end to the other. So I'm pretty thick-skinned when it comes to that now. But if I treat you with respect, I expect you to respect the office.
So if you tell the newspaper, look, there was a story written 4 years ago, you would anticipate that they would go look it up.
They would go look it up and bring it forward and say, yes, this was printed 4 years ago.
And therefore, maybe the story isn't necessary.
That's right.
Which apparently it wasn't. I mean, if
it died on the wayside. It's people are like, yeah, I read that. It said right there, all charges were dropped. So why are we bringing it up? And that was actually
except maybe to embarrass you or minimize you, as the editor had said a week or two earlier, that you would be marginalized if you were insisting on cutting the gas tax.
Yes, I wasn't.